Hello, friends! For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Melanie, and I am the newly crowned Miss Texas Petite 2020. I am so honored that Alycia asked me to share my story with you guys. I am going to be bragging on her a lot and sharing a little bit about how I put together a legacy project in 10 days and ended up winning interview and winning my pageant with that Made in 10 Days legacy project. Now, I will say my story is a bit non-traditional, and I don't think I would normally recommend trying to do a project in 10 days, but especially for those of you who may be hearing all of this goodness for the first time, and maybe you have a pageant coming up in like less than a month, and you're hearing all this and you're like, oh my gosh, I totally see why I need a legacy project, but I'm just not sure I can put one together in a month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is. If I can do it, you can do it. I promise. We had initially planned on doing a podcast, and I would interview women who were in public office or who were working in the nonprofit world. So I was getting ready to do this podcast, and then at the end of July, a friend reached out to me and she was like, hey Melanie, I know you were planning on taking a year off of competing because Miss America was delayed. And I'd heard about this other pageant. It's called Miss Texas Petite, and there's nobody representing Houston, which is where I live. So I think you could do it. Are you interested? And because at this point I've worked with Alycia and I know that opportunity passes, I was like, you know what? I've got time that weekend. Let's do it. Now, the problem with this is my pageant was in 2 weeks. Now, if you know anything about production, you will know that a good podcast cannot be produced in 2 weeks. And even if you could do it in 2 weeks, you wouldn't have had enough time to gain insight into how your podcast was performing, and you wouldn't have been able to see impact, right? So I couldn't do a podcast. So I had to go back and think about what are my values and what did I truly want that podcast to accomplish. And for me, it wasn't so much about the specific topics I was interviewing on. It was more of the idea of providing a sort of mentoring opportunity for girls. If there's a girl who does not normally have access to women who are very successful, maybe they don't know any women who are in public office, or they don't know somebody who's like a C-suite executive in a nonprofit or whatever, they're not going to see that and know that that's something that's possible for them. And they're especially not going to know, even if they do decide that that's something they want to do, they're not going to have the tools that they need to get there because they don't know what they need to do to get to that point. So I decided to take that concept of mentoring and giving girls a chance to learn from people who have been in their shoes and then gone on to be successful, to take that very literally and make it into an actual mentoring event. And so that is what I brought into the interview room with me at Miss Texas Petite 3 days after I did that event. And we did not talk about anything else other than my legacy project. They were so curious as to how I put that together, why that was something I was passionate about, and what my plans were for continuing that. Now, I intentionally kind of went into excruciating detail explaining my project because there are two things that I want you to notice about it. The first is that it was not perfect. There is no way that a project that was completed in 10 days is going to be perfect. But because I had gone in with something in the interview, it put me miles ahead because I was able to actually talk about things I had previously done to promote my platform. And let me tell you, judges are a lot more likely to believe you if you're talking about future plans if you've already done stuff. It's much easier to say, because I've done this already prior to winning the crown, I'd like to continue doing this as Miss So-and-so. So that was the first thing that I took away from it. Even though it wasn't perfect, it was something, and something does very well in interview. Now, the second thing, and arguably much more importantly, is that by taking action, I now have clarity, does that sound familiar, about how I want to live out my passion for girls' mentorship and girls' empowerment, and how I can better serve others based on how I did with this event. And that's something I really love about Alycia. It's not just about, we're going to win your pageant, although that's certainly part of it. I think to her, it's almost more important that you know your value as a person, and you know your story and your worth and what you can bring to the table. And then she kind of helps you figure out, how are you going to bring that gift to the rest of the world? And how are you going to serve others with this gift that you've been given by God? And that is the biggest takeaway I've had from this. The crown and sash was the cherry on top, honestly. Just by taking action with her help, I now have clarity about how I want to continue to make a difference and make an impact. And I know you guys are going to go through the exact same thing once you guys get started on your legacy projects. I absolutely cannot wait to cheer you all on as you guys start on yours. I'm developing mine too. Mine is always, it's still evolving. It's in the works, so I'm doing it right along with you guys. And I'm excited to do this together. You guys are amazing, and I can't wait to finish out this week of the Pageant Jumpstart with you.